So his advice is not focus inward, go to therapy, read a self-help book, work on yourself so that you do actually change, so that you can address whatever concerns your ex had with you, and that might improve your chances of getting back together with this person. It's lie about it, conceal it, hide it, give the external presentation that you've changed to therefore woo them back into getting with you. Okay, hi. Oh, you're going through puberty. Okay, hi everybody. Thanks for coming back if you've been here before, or hi, welcome if you're new. My name's Mickey. I'm a therapist, and we talk about therapy things on this channel. Today, we are talking about something that I never anticipated talking about, mostly because I didn't know that it existed until I found it on accident. In doing research for a video about going no contact with your family, which by the way, should be up sometime soon. Stay tuned for that. However, in doing research for that video, I decided to look for inspiration. And so I typed no contact into the search on YouTube and found a whole side of the internet that I didn't know existed and that I'm personally quite grieved to learn about. So we are talking about somebody whose name is Coach Lee today. His YouTube channel has 304,000 subscribers at the time that we are recording this. And he is a self-described breakup coach. His website is called myexbackcoach.com. And it seems like the bulk of his content is centered around this theme of like how to get your ex back, how to make your ex miss you, how to get in your ex's head. Like all of these types of videos are recently uploaded on his channel. And so I was obviously shocked to find this, and I went down a rabbit hole. I watched a lot of videos on this man's channel, RIP to my algorithm because it's ruined now. But I wanted to talk about the very first video that I saw, which is called How Long Does No Contact Take to Work on My Ex? For those of you who are, luckily not familiar with this content niche, the general theme is that they have a thing called the no contact rule. And to be clear, this is a thing that exists for other folks in regards to dealing with breakups, and it's not inherently problematic. The core principle is exactly what it sounds like. You don't contact your ex. You essentially cut off communication with this person. And to be clear, some folks do use this in a very healthy way, where essentially they say, in order to help them emotionally process and grieve and like really come to grips with the end of this relationship, they choose to not be in contact with that person, not be friends with that person, not do the casual contact thing, again, to facilitate like their own emotional processing and to help them move forward. There's nothing wrong with that. I want to be super clear. I think there are lots of really healthy and wonderful ways that people can deal with breakups, and I don't think that being no contact with your ex is inherently problematic. However, being no contact with your ex for the purpose of manipulating them and trying to make them want to like you again is. So we're going to talk about that today because Coach Lee made this video again called How Long Does No Contact Take to Work on My Ex, which is a really interesting topic. So we're going to get into that. I do want to give a brief trigger warning for manipulation and like problematic patterns in relationships if that's a sore spot for you. Some of the language here might push your buttons, so just be aware of that going in. That said, let's get into this video. Sublime! We're not watching this whole 20-minute video at single speed. Pure fuel.
How long does no contact take to get your ex back? This is Coach Lee, and I'm going to talk to you about that. So first of all, why would you use the no contact rule? A lot of people will often say, why wouldn't you just work on it? Why wouldn't you go after what you want? Let's think that through. If you want something, you have to actually do the things that give you the best chance of getting it. Wanting to is not the gold standard. Wanting to may help you persevere, and in that way, it's very important. But you need the correct techniques, the correct details to deal with whatever situation you're dealing with. Let's take a child, for example, maybe a 3-year-old who's going up against a professional athlete. The child may love the game and they may want to win really badly. They may even pitch a fit if they don't. But does that really help them? The professional knows the techniques and the professional is going to win, and we all know that. So it's not just about wanting to, it's about knowing how and then applying that want to. And in this case, what I'm telling you is not really that controversial. It's basically if this person does not want you in their life, that you don't gain anything by trying to force your way into it. Another example I give a lot is if you were fired from a job.
Hold on. This isn't inherently wrong. I want to be super clear about that. If someone doesn't want to be in your life, you don't gain anything by trying to force yourself into their life. That is correct. However, he's going to go on to talk about how essentially if you just pretend that you don't want to be in their life, that you can like reverse psychology this person into wanting you, which is the reason that we're talking about this. Again, I want to be super clear. On its face, some of the things that he's going to say are not necessarily problematic, right? But there is a greater underlying subtext here that is very problematic. And so we're going to tease out some nuance here. I do also want to be super clear before we get any further into this video. I'm not necessarily saying that Coach Lee is a bad person, or that if you followed any of these teachings that you're a bad person. I know that there are a lot of people who have found benefit in this, and like, listen, that's none of my business. The internet is vast and wide, and if you found something that helps you improve your mental health or what have you, obviously, as a clinician, I'm for that, but I do think that there's an important conversation to be had about the norms that we're perpetuating in society, especially around dating. So that's why we're talking about it.
The boss is not going to be impressed if you come back the next day, and if you pitch a fit, if you demand your old cubicle back or your old office back, and you start boxing up the person that they had put in there and getting him out of there. Nobody's going to be impressed with that. They're not going to say, wow, he's really working hard to keep his job. No, you've already been fired. And coming back the next day is actually more a sign of instability and maybe that they made the right decision. When someone breaks up with you, if you can handle it with grace.
Okay, but also the reason that I take issue with this example is because in that example, if we're following the teaching that he's prescribing, the way to get your job back would be to get another job at another successful company, or to just like not have a job and to be sending these signals from the outside that you're very healthy, happy, and stable. And then therefore your boss would call you back and offer you your old job back, which is not a thing that happens. That's not true. I think it's important to like really follow that to its logical conclusion, because it does kind of highlight some of the problems with this perspective. Okay, before we get too much deeper into this video, I want to pause and say thank you to this week's sponsor, which is June's Journey. I'm so excited to partner with them again because you guys know I'm a busy person and I really need some time at the end of the day to help decompress and wind down. One of my favorite ways to do that is by playing June's Journey. June's Journey is a mobile game that's free to download and it has a really fun murder mystery timeline, but you solve the murder mystery by finding hidden clues and objects in these really beautiful and aesthetic scenes. My favorite thing about this is that you can kind of turn your brain off and immerse yourself in this world of finding these hidden objects that are fun and aesthetic and cool, but it is a really great way to wind down and just like be at peace at the end of the day for me. Personally, I'm also a sucker for remodeling and customizing features in games, and one of the funnest parts about June's Journey is that you get to fix up your mansion and your garden island, and so you can buy little decorations and stuff. Usually there are fun events that you can buy fun specific decorations for, and I really have a great time getting to customize and upgrade and add new stuff to my island also. If you're looking for something fun and aesthetic to add into your wind down time at the end of the night like I am, click the link in the description or scan the QR code that's on the screen to go download June's Journey for free. Make sure to show June's Journey some love for showing me some love on the channel. It really does help support me in the work that we're trying to do here. Thank you again to June's Journey for sponsoring this week's video. Let's go ahead and hop back in.
And dignity, it's a lot more attractive than if you demand to be heard, you show up when you're not welcome or when you're uninvited, or if you're blocked and you try to go around it and come in another way basically to see them. These things are not attractive. They make you look unstable. And I don't know how people think that that's so controversial, because it's not. And I see no contact work a lot because that's sometimes the perspective that the other person needs, is for you not to be chasing them, for you not to be putting them up on a pedestal or giving signs that you want them back, to actually have them have to deal with the breakup. That's when they can actually see and decide if they really want it or not. But when you're pestering them, you're staying in communication with them, you're telling them you love them, that you'll never ever be unavailable and you'll always be there waiting on them, those kinds of things, then basically you're not letting them experience a real breakup. They are not experiencing the consequences of the breakup. And so they're getting off scot-free because they're getting you in their life even though they don't want you there at the moment. And they are also getting the breakup. And so there's no need for them to make any changes. And no contact also provides...
Hold on. First of all, I want to be super clear. This take that like they're not suffering the consequences of breaking up with you and they're getting the benefit of you being in their life is an interesting one. This is a little wild to me, I'm not going to lie. I think, again, the things that he's saying here are not explicitly or directly wrong, right? Showing up uninvited or insisting that you be allowed to be in someone's life when they've expressly told you that they don't want you there is problematic. This is hurtful. This can turn into stalking and abuse really, really quickly. So I just want to be super clear. Don't do that. However, this attitude that like you being a part of their life is not allowing them to experience the consequences of a breakup makes it sound as though the no contact rule is intended to punish someone, which is a problem. I want to, again, be super, super clear that if you have found being no contact with your ex to be a great way or a nice vehicle for you to process your emotions, to deal with the grief, to realize or come to grips with the end of that relationship, All of that is perfectly healthy. That's perfectly normal. And if that's your preferred way of dealing with it, that's your prerogative as a hopefully adult human being. The problem that I take with this messaging though is that it comes along with this attitude that using the no contact rule is a strategy to convince your ex to get back together with you. And I know that for some people, breakups are not necessarily a permanent thing and you will eventually get back with your partner, and that's all well and good. I think people should be allowed to structure their relationships in whatever way works for them. However, this attitude that there is a surefire way to trick someone to get back together with you is problematic. Full stop. I'm not going to apologize for that take.
A terrific service to you in that it allows you to heal. It allows you to keep your dignity so that you're not begging and pleading and doing things that I promise you will regret later. And you will know that they lowered your chances and probably lowered your attraction in the eyes of this person, your attractiveness. And you will be glad that you stayed away, let them sort this out, and you let them see that you were strong enough to live life without them. Even if it's just for a few months, it can show them that you could move on and they could actually experience some of the loss, or at least understand that this breakup has consequences, and those include losing you, because a lot of the time they just aren't thinking of it that way because they think they want you out of their life. They don't want the relationship anymore. But when they have to actually experience it, that's when they know for sure. And they can't know that until they do. And a lot of times it's not nearly the ride into the sunset that they thought it would be. And you were much.
Okay. Listen, the other thing about this that's concerning to me is that a lot of the language that he uses is really similar to language that folks use in like incel corners of the internet. And I want to be super clear here. I'm not labeling this man or any of his followers necessarily as incels. However, being aware and thoughtful about the language that we're using is important as content creators, because if we are accidentally even giving people a write-off or, God forbid, encouragement to continue aligning with this viewpoint that is inherently problematic, that's dangerous, that can turn into violence, this is a problem, right? Like, I take issue with this. I also want to be clear, this is fucking bad advice. We're going to talk more about that in a minute, but generally speaking, I just want to draw people's attention to the fact that a lot of this language seems to be conveying an attitude that if you've been broken up with, the person who broke up with you is some silly, vapid little girl who just doesn't understand the consequences of her actions and like, you know what I'm saying? Like, this is why this language activates a lot of concern for me, because it does come off as this feeling that like, I am inherently always the person of value in this relationship. And if you broke up with me, surely you only broke up with me because you just aren't aware of the consequences of such a silly little decision. And eventually you'll come crawling back to me, which is not true in all cases, right? Sometimes people end a relationship with a partner because they are no longer willing to put up with problematic behavior, or because they feel unseen, or because the partner's not meeting their needs, or simply because they're just not a good fit. And that's perfectly okay. Dating, I don't want to undercut how difficult dating is. Don't get me wrong, especially since my partner and I opened our relationship and practiced dating more, I have more empathy for how difficult dating is than I ever have before. However, that is not an excuse to treat people in this way of like, I am always the prize and the thing that is like, you know, ought to be chased after, and especially to treat people as if you are faultless in this relationship, right? Breakups are rarely the result of like one singular action, or especially the result of like just ignorance about the consequences of choices. I can assure you that most people who are breaking up with someone are aware that that will mean that they have to live in solitude, essentially. Like, that's a pretty well understood consequence. And oftentimes people enter into this choice in a conscientious and intentional way.
Better off if you will give them the breakup by not contacting them, by backing away, just like they say that they want. How long the no contact rule can take depends on several things. First, how much loss they feel. And that goes back to what I was talking about, in that you have to allow them to feel that they could lose you. Because at a breakup, when they break up with you, they feel like that they are above you on the attraction totem pole. And that's not a conscious thought. They are not thinking, I'm better than her, or I'm better than him, so I'm going to break up with them. But they think that something out there is better for them. It can be a better situation. Maybe they think you're a jerk. Maybe they think that there's too many arguments, too much drama. Maybe they think you're selfish, you're self-centered, all kinds of things. And if they think that, even if they think that in spite of that, you're still a pretty good person, they think that there is someone better for them out there. And it's not necessarily something that's all negative against you. They just think maybe someone else would work better. And that's kind of what they think, is that they have made this decision and they are going to go off to their something better. And the process of breaking up with that person does make the person doing the dumping feel like they are more wanted, simply because you want the relationship and they don't. So that's a pretty basic thing, even though some people get upset when I say that. I'm just telling you the truth. And yes, if there's abuse, then you think you can do better than abuse if you're the dumper. If there's been cheating, then you think you could do better and find someone who won't cheat. So it tends to work out that way, that the person doing the breaking up thinks that there is something better for them out there.
Real quick, I just want to rewind to the thing that he said. I'm not sure if I'm understanding this correctly, and so I am happy happy to walk this back if I'm understanding. Please let me know in the comments if I'm not understanding correctly. But am I to understand that this man just said if there's abuse, this person thinks that they can do better than abuse?
And yes, if there's abuse, then you think you can do better than abuse if you're the dumper.
Hello? Like, this is what I'm talking about. That a lot of this language is very concerning. We shouldn't be having conversations with anybody who's been broken up with because they're an abusive partner, right? First of all, I want to be super clear. I did a pretty extensive look into this man's history and his credentials and his training around this topic. He has been a relationship or like get your ex back coach. He says for several decades, like 20 something years, he says. But I want to be super clear. This man possesses no college degrees that I'm aware of. He's lectured at places like Pepperdine, but he doesn't list any credentials or relevant degrees or certifications or trainings that are provided by any kind of like regulated or accredited body anywhere on his website or on his LinkedIn or anywhere else that I could find. So first of all, fucking red flag. If you don't have any like formal education in this topic, then we can get ourselves into some trouble really quickly in terms of espousing advice that is in fact actually dangerous. This is a thing. I've talked about it on the channel before, but licensed mental health professionals are specifically trained to spot the signs of abuse in a relationship because it is inherently unethical and inappropriate for us to try to intervene or, God forbid, conduct couples counseling with someone who is being abused and their abuser. That can turn into a whole nightmare of like perpetuating the abuse cycle and actually participating in it, which is terrible and awful and bad. And so we as professionals are like bound ethically and by duty to like recuse ourselves from that situation and to implore the person who's being abused to seek resources, from a variety of like resources that we can provide. But we're not allowed to intervene in this relationship whatsoever because it is impossible to do without having some kind of accidental negative consequence. So if this man is actually speaking to people who have been dumped because they are abusers, I take a big fucking issue with that. I don't think that's a surprise to anybody. But on top of that, this language of like, give them the breakup is a red flag to me. Again, I want to be clear that not all of the language or things that he's saying are necessarily wrong, but there are these weird little tip-offs that happen in this video that are an eyebrow raise from me, and this phrase, give them the breakup, is definitely one of them. This also jogged my memory because at the time that we're filming this, I'm in the middle of watching season 5 of Love is Blind, and the core conflict there between Uche and Aaliyah came to mind in hearing him say this. There's a moment, actually, let me just look up the clip really quick. If you haven't watched it at this point, by the way, spoilers.
She didn't express any kind of reservations yesterday. We were on the same page. She told me that she loves me. I told her that I love her. She says that she could see herself marrying me. She can see a life with me. And to just walk away without saying anything, this doesn't make any sense. I can't accept this without having the chance to talk to her. Like, I need to talk to her.
This is very much the same attitude of like entitlement and like feeling owed communication or like, a further audience with this person. And I want to be super clear, this is a problematic take, right? If someone has expressed to you explicitly through a breakup that they are no longer interested in having you in their life or being in a relationship with you, that's not up for debate. This isn't a like, if I, then you compromise conversation. This is a very clear and explicit boundary that you don't really get the opportunity to say, I choose not to abide by that. That's abusive, right? That turns into stalking. And so phrasing it in this way is like really problematic and just concerning to me generally. I just wanted to bring your attention to that because it's just, again, this is an eyebrow raise from me. I did also slow the video down a tiny bit. I was watching it at 1.5 speed earlier. We're going to watch it at 1.25 speed now. So
that does not make them a bad person or a narcissist, though plenty of times an ex can be someone who at least acts like a narcissist, and that can be a win for you getting away from them.
I just want to be super clear again. We've talked about this ad nauseum on the channel. Please stop using the word fucking narcissist. It's not helpful. It perpetuates a stigma against narcissistic personality disorder, antisocial personality disorder, personality disorders generally, which is not helpful because the reality is that the people who are diagnosed with those conditions can very much be healthy and okay people who are committed to working on themselves, who are in therapy, who are doing the work to unlearn any problematic behavior patterns that come along with with that particular disorder. On top of that, it's not okay for us to be slinging diagnoses at people as if it's a thing that we can just do. Even as a licensed mental health professional, I can't diagnose strangers or people that I don't know. This is inappropriate. Diagnosis is a somewhat sophisticated process of ruling in and ruling out that should only happen between a licensed professional or a licensed credentialed professional and a client who has explicitly and expressly given them permission to do so. So just generally don't really like this. Call someone selfish, call someone self-absorbed, call them self-centered, call them obsessed with themselves, call them, like invalidating of other people's perspectives. Say that they refuse to validate or hear or understand anybody else's perspectives or opinions. Say all of that, right? Because that's usually what people mean. Please stop calling people a narcissist. Also, I just want to be clear. I have so many thoughts. This take of like the person who is breaking up with you views themselves as inherently more attractive does kind of reduce this process of a breakup to this very transactional and like social capital E interaction, which I don't like. And it does kind of carry some problematic vibes with it. I want to be super clear again. People will choose to break up with partners for a variety of different reasons, not all of which include thinking that I inherently have more value than this other person, right? Sometimes the people who break up with someone are doing that because they're not in a good place, because they have reservations about the relationship, because again, they just simply don't think it's a good fit, because they're unhappy, because they feel unsafe. There's lots and lots and lots of reasons that we can end a relationship that don't have anything to do with saying, I am inherently more attractive than you or inherently better than you. And again, reducing it to this very simplistic view is dangerous, in my opinion.
But if they don't get to experience the breakup and they don't feel the loss, and sometimes that could be because they don't believe you could stay away. So maybe if at the beginning you begged and pleaded for weeks and months and just wouldn't let it go, and you showed up and you did a lot of things that maybe now you wish you hadn't done, that can cause a big delay in them feeling like you could actually move on with your life. A lot of times they can permanently feel like that you could be gotten back easily, that they could just make a call or a text and get you back. As a matter of fact, a recent coaching client that I spoke with actually told me that. He said, I just kind of thought if I ever wanted her back, it would just take a text or a phone call and she would come right back. That wasn't the case. And he regretted it deeply and wanted her back, but she was not playing ball anymore. So you have to give them the opportunity to feel the loss. The second dependent factor on this is what stage they were in after the breakup. And a lot of that depends on your response to the breakup. And as I've said before, it makes complete sense. And it's actually a good thing if you push back some and you say, I don't want the breakup. I think we're good for each other. I think we have a future together. At least give them some things to think about and for them to at least know that at one point you were open to it, because we don't want them to think that you're completely not interested in getting back together with them. If you want to get back together, they need to think there is some hope, that there is something motivating them to reach out to you.
Inspire hope. This is the dentist system.
This, I don't know if you guys heard that. If you're not a fan of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, the dentist system is a joke. The running gag in It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia is that one of the main characters, whose name is Dennis, is obsessed with himself and has a really problematic view of relationships. He's portrayed routinely as this person who really devalues and dehumanizes women and the people that he's in relationships with generally. He develops something called the dentist system for dating. The dentist system in the show, his system for like successfully wooing a woman is demonstrate value, engage physically, nurture dependence, neglect emotionally, inspire hope, and separate entirely. The joke being that the dentist system is literally intended to manipulate this person into really, really being obsessed with you. This is why, again, I want to be clear, the dentist system is a joke. It's written and like portrayed in this very satirical way as like a commentary about the problematic and misogynistic views that some men have in relationships, but it's meant to be an exaggeration of that. Again, whatever, I'm explaining satire to you, you get it. But the reason that this is so problematic is because this is like kind of that a little bit. This attitude that you should be inspiring hope and like keeping this open door and like all of this stuff that's like very covert and like intended to sort of like subconsciously communicate things. This is not an ideal way to be conducting yourself in relationships. And I want to be super clear. I know that it's not always possible or feasible or good practice to just be like hard on sleeve, like my guts on the table, honest to a fault all the time. That's also fair. However, this expectation, let me recenter really quick. Hold on. The thing that I want to draw people's attention to is that this man's teaching is founded on this principle that if someone is breaking up with you, they are doing it to manipulate you. And so your way of getting back into their life is to manipulate them and like beat them at their own game so that then you can get back into their life. And I want to be super clear. That's not true. That's not real. Lots of people break up with people, again, for a variety of different reasons that don't include having some deep-seated desire to manipulate someone or make them feel less than. And engaging with someone that's broken up with you in this very manipulative and covert, like secretive way is problematic and like dangerous. Perpetuating this advice is very dangerous. The other thing that I want to be clear about is that if someone has broken up with you and they do get back together with you, let's say you follow this man's advice and it does work, right? How do you think that person would feel to find out that the reason that they were attracted to you is because you had participated in a multi-step plan that was specifically and carefully designed to manipulate your emotions and to play games with your heart and your feelings to get you to want to be back together with them? That doesn't convey an attitude of respect. That doesn't convey an attitude of genuineness or authenticity. That certainly doesn't convey an attitude of respect or compassion, rather. This isn't kind. This isn't caring. This isn't honest. And so even if you are successful in using this format, it doesn't lend itself to being a healthy relationship because it's founded on lies. Like this is so, it's like almost insane. It's like almost laughable how inappropriate this is.
Also be clear that you could move on and that you might have already moved on so that they can feel some of the reality here, which you might also call anxiety over the situation. But if after the breakup, you basically would not let them have the breakup, then they can be in basically a stage of repulsion.
Let me just rephrase this to be more clear. If you harass, stalk, and refuse to respect the boundaries of the person who has broken up with you, they will be repulsed by you, which is a perfectly normal fucking human reaction to have if someone is refusing to respect your boundaries and is harassing you and stalking you. You see what I'm saying? We're using a lot of flowery language to shield what is actually a very problematic behavior pattern to be talking about as if this is normal or okay.
Which I talk about the stages that your ex goes through during no contact, but if it's not a clean cut enough at the beginning and you don't give them the breakup, and I understand you're hurting, you're desperate, it feels like your life is falling apart and you're trying to do anything you can to save it. So I'm not getting on to you and I'm not saying that I don't relate to that at all. But 20 years of this, 23 at this point, actually has shown me very clearly that if I can communicate with someone in that situation and prevent them from doing these things, then I can stop this stage of repulsion, which is basically, I'm so glad I blocked him, or I'm so glad she's not reaching out to me anymore. Maybe she gets it. And that's when the person can finally start to experience some of a real breakup and the stages that an ex goes through during no contact. But the problem is it may still take several weeks because they can stay in that relief stage that I talk about. And I'll link to that video in the description below, but it's called Stages Your Ex Goes Through During No Contact. And if they are significantly delayed with that, it can throw everything off. Obviously, it can make things take longer, but it can also make them appreciate that you're gone longer, and it can make them doubt it, even if they start to feel like they want you back because they have those memories of you doing that. The good thing is that pattern interruption can be on your side because they kind of wonder, why did you stop doing that? Maybe you have changed. Maybe you do see things differently. Maybe you're over them. So that can be a really good thing too, if it impacts them in that way.
I want to be super clear here. Again, what he's saying is essentially repress this impulse that you have to essentially disregard your ex-partner's boundaries and either harass them or stalk them, not because that's a problematic thing to do, but because it will lessen your chances of getting back together with this person and it might cause them to think that you've changed. So his advice is not focus inward, go to therapy, read a self-help book, work on yourself so that you do actually change, so that you can address whatever concerns your ex had with you, and that might improve your chances of getting back together with this person. It's lie about it, conceal it, hide it, give the external presentation that you've changed to therefore woo them back into getting with you. You see what I'm saying? Like on the surface, the language is not necessarily, or the message is not necessarily problematic, but the underpinnings of this are so dark.
But either way, stopping that activity, stopping the pestering and the begging and the pleading and trying to talk them into getting back together, that is very important. And you need to do that for your own dignity, but also to give you a better chance of getting back together with them, because I know you at least want that option. And some people...
Not because that's the respectful thing to do, not because your ex-partner is worthy of having their boundaries honored, not because it's the compassionate and kind and adult thing to do, because it won't make you look desperate, because it's good for your dignity. Hello?
People, after a few months, decide, I don't even want them back. Even if they came back, I don't want them. Wouldn't it be great to be able to get to that place? And so you at least want that option. Before I get to number 4, get information on my emergency breakup kit. You can do that at myexpatcoach.com. I will link to it in the description.
I might buy that, by the way, because it's $60.
So that you can get 25% off the emergency breakup kit just because you're watching this video. What a guy that Coach Lee is. And if you're married, get my free mini course on saving a marriage. You can get that at myexpatcoach.com.
You want to get a marriage
just click
course?
on marriage, and you'll see the option for that.
We should take it for
I'll
the
also
pod.
link to that in the description below. The available, acceptable alternatives. Now, what I mean by that is that a lot of times someone will break up with you thinking that there's someone better for them out there. But when they actually get a taste of the world, to see what it's like with online dating, the mess, the nightmare that has become, and how self-centered so many people are these days. We're raising, in many ways, a culture of narcissists. Even if they're not clinically diagnosable, they act like narcissists, thinking that somehow they are the prize and everyone else is just lucky to be around them. And there's a lot of people out there like that now. And when they start to experience some of that, they might see that it was much better with you. However, they could also meet someone great. And I don't want to be dishonest with you or give you false hope about that. But I can tell you that if you were a good partner to them, you were a good boyfriend, you were a good girlfriend, you were a good spouse, that there's a great chance that they can see the difference between you and the other people out there, simply because the odds are not very good. Usually, if it's a great person, they're already taken because someone recognizes that. And so there's a lot of play in this that you don't necessarily think about. But if they don't have an acceptable, available alternative to you, that they think this is an improvement or even equal, then the odds are really good. They're going to reflect back on the relationship, and they're going to at least consider that the breakup was a mistake.
I want to be super clear. Again, I just want to restate the things that he's stating for you in more plain language. This man is basically saying that your work in trying to get back together with your ex is not to actually be a good alternative, not to, again, actually work on yourself, to look inward, to reflect on whatever criticisms your ex had of you. It's to bank on the fact that online dating is so frustrating that they'll just come back to you. And so basically your work is like, don't be fucking annoying and give this perspective from the outside that you've worked on it. Don't actually work on it, but give this perspective from the outside that you've worked on it, and they'll probably come back because who likes online dating? You see what I'm saying?
And that's a good thing if you want your ex back. I would suggest that you consider that this person was able to walk away from you, and that should give you reserve. When they reach out, when they start talking to you again, it's important that you show some reserve. And I don't mean that you be cold or impolite to them, but you show them that you are not 100% certain. And one of my go-tos is for you to say, well, I'm open to getting back together, but I want to take it one day at a time. That way they at least know that some progress has been made, that they do have some hope, that they can work towards something, and that it's within their grasp, but they don't just get it all back with a snap of their fingers. That what they did was not acceptable, and that it might be a deal breaker with you. That way, they know they kind of have to earn it back, and that's good. That is a good thing. Both of you should be earning this back. It should not all come back.
Breaking up with you is not acceptable, and so therefore this is a behavior that should be punished. This comes across as a parent punishing a child for, like, being disobedient. Yuck.
At once. It won't feel the same. That's why a lot of times it fades out when that happens. And a lot of you have experienced that. I know because you've talked about it. You've emailed us about it. You've talked to my coaches about it, or you've talked to my support community at lovedynamics.com about it. But if you believe that you were a good girlfriend, a good boyfriend, or a good spouse, then have confidence that when they see what else is out there, that they will actually realize you were better for them, that the relationship that you two had was better for them, and that there's not an acceptable, available alternative out there. That's important. Have faith in yourself, bet on yourself, and that's what no contact is. It's saying, I don't have to say anything else. I believe you will recognize this at some point, and if you don't, then you weren't the one for me anyway.
Don't demonstrate value, work on yourself, be a good person, and hope that if your ex and you are meant to be, or that, you know, they're open to that, that they'll see that from the outside and therefore want to be with you. Again, just give the illusion of this from the outside and bank on the fact that there are no acceptable, available alternatives so that they come back to you. Can we just, let's just conduct a thought experiment here. Let's say that this does happen, that this works, right? And this person gets in a relationship with you to realize that you have, in fact, not worked on yourself, reflected inward, looked at any of the criticisms that your ex had of you, done any meaningful thinking about those things, that you've just been really good at presenting this illusion from the outside so that they'll get back together with you. Is the hope then that the relationship will be better? This is the other issue that I take with this advice, is that it's predicated upon this belief that you as the dumpee don't have any work to do, that you didn't do anything wrong, that there's nothing you need to do about yourself. He does have other videos where he does say you should work on yourself and blah, 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 whatever, to give credit where it's due, I guess. But I want to be clear that the bulk of this man's content is not dedicated to teaching folks about how to work on themselves or why working on yourself might be a good strategy, how that might lend itself to being a person that gets back together with their ex. It's all about rejecting from the outside this illusion that will manipulate your ex into getting back together with you. This is not helpful, right? The reality, again, is that oftentimes when people are breaking up with someone, that there's usually some underlying reason for it. Don't get me wrong. Some people do get into patterns where they break up with people as a power move. That's a separate conversation. But to act as if that's the bulk of the issue is like disingenuous, in my opinion. The truth is that most people who break up with someone have a good reason for doing it. And so if you do really want to get back together with your ex, you'd be much better served to think through what criticisms did they have of me? What issues were present in our relationship? What part of that was my responsibility? What work can I feasibly do on myself? Not even so that I can get back together with this person, but so that I can do the work for myself, about myself, and potentially be a better partner for someone in the future, or for this person if that is a thing that will come to fruition. But rather than teaching people about how to do this, why you should do this, the benefits of doing this, he basically just sells people this advice about how to hopefully covertly manipulate people from the outside, which is wild to me.
Number 5, their influences. So who's around them? There's a popular saying now, single girls make girls single. Because a lot of times, and this works for guys too, when your friends are single, a lot of times they don't get to spend as much time with you because you have a romantic partner. You have a boyfriend, you have a girlfriend. And so the guys will try to get their guy to be single with them, leave his girlfriend. The girls will try to get their girl to leave the guy so that they can go out and party and go to clubs and all that stuff that's really not as much fun as people think it is. And it's usually what single people do to meet people to hopefully form a relationship with. And yet you will see people in relationships digress. They will think that they want that they want to go out and have their independence again. Then they end up losing their relationship because they're chasing this party mindset, this party lifestyle. And then later they realize they gave up someone, they gave up a person for a mirage.
You see? Remember how I told you a lot of the language feels like incel bait? This is a thing that exists in these incel cultures, I guess. This attitude that women are just silly and they're promiscuous, that all they want to do is go party and casually hook up and be chased by some mega chad. And like all of this lends itself to this very misogynistic view of relationships being, again, predicated on this premise of like power and control and like attractiveness, when the truth is that ideally healthy relationships are founded on a mutual trust, a mutual respect, a mutual care and compassion, and also a shared set of interests, values, beliefs, and goals for life, right? There should not be this overt or covert exchange of power or feeling of control that we're trying to exert over one another. This attitude that you are so lucky to be with me because the acceptable, available alternatives are trash. Like, this is not healthy, right? We should not be entering into relationships with this attitude that you are in a relationship with me because you just have no better alternatives, or because I fill this void for you of not having to go out with your friends and all of this stuff. But on top of that, like, I want to highlight how hurtful and inaccurate this rhetoric is, that you should not have friends in a relationship, right? Or that if you have friends who are single, that of course they'll try to break up your relationship. You know who also does this? You know where this is a commonly shared belief? People who are abusers will try to separate you from your support system, from your family, from your friends, because they say they don't get it, they don't share our values, they don't respect your relationship, they're trying to draw us apart, they're trying to drive a wedge between us. Don't talk to them anymore. They don't get it. They wouldn't understand. You shouldn't be in a relationship with them, and your circle should exist of me and me only. This can turn into abuse so quickly. This is such a problem. I'm like blown away that this man with his full chest is giving this advice on the internet.
And unfortunately, that happens. And so that's where character matters. That's where maturity matters. That's where the ability to not let culture make your decisions and influence you matters. And so if they are being negatively influenced and people are encouraging them, like they have a support group keeping them away from you, that's a tough situation. And the more that you try to reach out and contact them, the worse it gets, because then these people are going to say, man, he's unstable. Because, you know, you like her and you want to try to talk to her and maybe see if you two could work it out. They will present that as that you're creepy and unstable. And they'll do that. Ladies, they'll do that to you too. The guys will say, she just doesn't respect you. She won't leave you alone. She doesn't think you can make your own decision. She thinks you have to be in a relationship with her because
this comes across as like, oh, you can't even flirt with people nowadays. Like, oh, this Me Too movement means that I can't even flirt with my coworkers. Like, this really has the same energy, and this is what I'm talking about. This presentation that, like, you, again, disregarding and not respecting your ex's boundaries and continually trying to contact them, pester them, harass them is just you, oh, God forbid, I like you, sorry to annoy you with my friendship. Like, that's not what this is. If you're concertedly disrespecting someone's boundaries, that is unstable, and that is a behavior that's worth criticism, right? Like someone's friends saying, this person is not a safe person, this person's not well right now because they will not respect your boundaries. That's a very healthy and normal reaction to have. I want to be clear, like the representation of like your ex having this big group of single people supporting them means that they're all against you and that they're all going to tell them lies. Like this is, again, the like victim complex thing. This is another common thing that shows up in incel chat rooms and this kind of stuff, that like you are inherently a victim because no one sees your value and everyone is against you and no one will ever understand how wonderful you actually are. This breeds resentment and that turns into violence very quickly.
she deserves it. Single friends can be great, but single friends can also try to make you single like them because they think it will give them a friend who's more available. So keep that in mind. I'm not bashing single people at all, but I am saying that just like everyone else, they are motivated by self-interest. So
I also just want to be clear here that if your friends, regardless of their relationship status, are behaving out of a self-interest in your life, like they're bad friends, right? Like you should get different friends, but this is not a pathological shared trait of all single people. This is such a misrepresentation of reality. And also an attempt to breed this distrust and suspicion of strangers, which is not healthy.
keep that in mind. That can have an impact on how long no contact takes to influence them. Number 6 is their ego. Some people think that when they are in a romantic situation, that the other person should do all the work, should do all the chasing, all the complimenting, and all the pursuing. I strongly encourage you, if you realize that's the person who broke up with you, I encourage you to see that as a blessing in disguise, because both people should be complimenting each other, pursuing each other, making the other person feel wanted. It should be mutual. It should not be one-sided. Both people should be the prize. There should not be a prize and a worshiper. That is wrong, and you will not be happy in such a relationship. It will be doomed if that is the case. And so if you realize that about your partner, that they have this massive ego, thinking that even if they broke up with you, and even after you begged and pleaded and told them how heartbroken you were, that they still think that you should be the one, that you should be the one to try to fix what they broke, that you should be the one to ask them to come back and all that, they're completely out of line, out of touch. They're wrong, and they don't understand how relationships work. They don't understand people, and a lot of times they have a very inflated sense of their own self-worth. So depending on the level of their ego, I can tell you that you either need to stay away and be glad that this happened, or if it's maybe not severe enough, then just know it's going to be a delay. But the way that they view this, the way that they view relationships, if they think they are the prize and everyone else should be chasing them down and pursuing and worshiping at their feet, that's a problem. And I hope you can see that that's actually a blessing that they're gone. But if you can't, I understand that, because loss is powerful. Sometimes you feel the loss and not the love. You think you're in love and that's why you're hurting so bad. But a lot of times it's simply losing something you thought you had. It's that sense of feeling like you were in control and then realizing you had no control, that this person now has all the control. And just like a dictator who can take your income, can take your property, you have only the hope of mercy. And that's why you beg. Begging is asking for mercy. It's saying, I have no power in this situation. I have given you too much power, and I'm begging you to have mercy on me. And so you don't want to make your ex your dictator. Never give someone that kind of power over you. Before I get...
See how this, you know what I'm saying? I feel like I've talked it to death. You get it. But this language is really problematic. And I just want to encourage people, especially from a media literacy point of view, in like this day and age of digital content and like a lot of it existing on the internet, et cetera, to be aware of subtext in situations like this. Because on its face, if you analyze it based on just the language or the statement only, it's not necessarily the worst advice, but the underpinnings, the beliefs that inform the things that he's saying are very problematic.
How they viewed the relationship will impact all of this. When they look back, did they see a lot of fighting? Did they see a lot of selfishness? Did they feel like it was all about you and that they were just supposed to be grateful that they could be around you? Was there drama? Did you put other things above them? Were you two moving in two different directions and you only gave each other the scraps? Was there a lot of rejection? These are things that they will look at, and they have to decide, do they want to go back to that? Because that is what they assume will be the case. The good thing is that during no contact, a lot of times they go back in their mind to the early days when hopefully that wasn't happening, when hopefully those things weren't happening. And it can kind of reset their mind and make them remember that there were good times, because they tend to associate the negatives with the breakup itself, and no contact can serve as a little bit of a reset button that makes them think back to the beginning. That's something that took me a while to figure out what was going on, but that's how the human mind tends to work. After a breakup, when the other person is not trying to reclaim the relationship, that's usually what happens. It doesn't always happen. No contact is not 100% effective. It does not always bring an ex back, but it does work a lot. And it's best for you no matter what. Handling a breakup with dignity and respecting yourself is the most important thing that you can do right now.
Listen, there is just like a whole world of problematic vibes that are happening here. I just also, the way that this man looks directly at the camera makes me feel very uneasy. I don't like it. Again, I've talked this to death, and I know that there is probably a lot of repeating myself in this video, but it just is important, I think, to really stress how problematic this viewpoint is, especially because it seems to be informed by these beliefs that relationships are predicated upon this mutual manipulation that happens, which is not true. Again, ideally, healthy relationships are founded on mutual trust, respect, care and compassion, shared interests, beliefs, values, goals, right? This is not a thing that's happening. Like this presentation of all relationships being a series of carefully calculated decisions that are all manipulated. Like this is not real. It almost reminds me of the thing that QAnon believers do, where like everything is a sign. It's all a symbol. Like, did you see that bird? That's surely a sign that it's happening today. Like, that's not helpful. That's not true. It breeds hypervigilance and anxiety and distrust. And for what it's worth, if you're walking around with this perspective, it's not surprising that someone would feel very overwhelmed by being in a relationship with you, because this attitude that everything is constantly a sign of you disrespecting me or not valuing me, or you thinking that you're higher on the attraction totem pole than I am, is not healthy. Like, this is not a healthy way to engage in relationships. There is a whole host of work that people can do around that type of anxiety. And I want to be clear, having anxiety in relationships is not shameful. It doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't mean that you're a terrible human being. And it is still probably important to do the work on that, to unlearn those things, not only for yourself, because it feels a whole lot better to not be anxious all the time, take it from me, but also because this can be a wonderfully impactful thing to bring into relationships, a greater sense of self-assurance, a lowered sense of hypervigilance or anxiety or fear. All of those things can lend themselves to better outcomes in relationships. I just really greatly disagree with the way that this man addresses and approaches relationship work generally. I want to encourage everybody to be careful. I had no idea that this corner of the internet even existed, and I'm quite grieved to find out that it does. I know that I said this at the top, but I do just want to be clear. If the no contact rule is a vehicle for you to process your feelings, to come to grips with the end of the relationship, and to like work with your own self, that's your business. I think that's perfectly healthy and fine. I'm not saying that all people who follow the no contact rule are bad people, because that's not true. But this advice especially is just very worrisome, and I really want to caution people against taking anything that this man says seriously. For what it's worth, there are lots of wonderful resources for processing emotions, dealing with breakups, and like perspectives about relationships generally. There are also a lot of really wonderful therapists and clinicians and people who use research and evidence-based practice to talk about relationships. If there is an issue that you're having in your relationship, there's likely a licensed, credentialed professional, or at least experienced and like well-founded in evidence-based practice professional who talks about those issues. So I'll link some stuff in the description for you guys in case you're looking for resources like that. But again, I really do just want to encourage people to be safe, be discerning about content on the internet, especially in regards to things like this, because this can turn into, not the best practice really quickly. That said, if you guys like the video, we do talk about pop culture stuff like this every now and again, but we also talk about a cute educational moment every now and again. So I'd love to have you stay for that. I also want to give a quick shout out to June's Journey. Thank you again for sponsoring this week's video. Go download June's Journey if you haven't already. It really is wonderful. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share the video to help the channel grow and to help each other grow. And I will see you guys next Saturday. Okay, bye.